Welcome back to Twin Chat. Hi, I'm Kenan McCumber, mom of two and teacher living in Bend, Oregon.
And hi, I'm Steph Kafori, mom of three, life coach living in Hawaii. So, Kenan and I are so excited that you've joined us again today. And today it's just going to be the two of us talking again. And we're going to talk about transitions and transformation and what it means to grow, evolve, and embrace change and take risks. And I want to share an excerpt from a book that my coach shared with me 3 years ago. So I'm going to look down and read. It's called The Flying Trapeze from the Essen Book of Days by Dan Perry. Sometimes I feel like my life is a series of trapeze swings. I'm either hanging on to a trapeze bar, swinging along, or for a few moments, I'm hurtling across space between the trapeze bars. Mostly, I spend my time hanging on for dear life to the trapeze bar of the moment. It carries me along at a certain steady rate of swing, and I have the feeling that I'm in control. I know most of the right questions and even some of the right answers. But once in a while, as I'm merrily, or not so merrily, swinging along, I look ahead of me into the distance, and what do I see? I see another trapeze bar looking at me. It's empty, and I know in that place, in me that knows, that this new bar has my name on it. It is my next step, my growth, my aliveness coming to get me. In my heart of hearts, I know that for me to grow, I must release my grip on the present, well known bar to move to the new one. Each time it happens, I hope, no, I pray that I won't have to grab the new one. But in my knowing place, I know that I must totally release my grasp on my old bar. And for some moments in time, I must hurtle across space before I can grab the new bar. Each time I do this, I'm filled with terror. It doesn't matter that in all my previous hurdles, I've always made it. Each time I'm afraid I will miss, that I will be crushed on unseen rocks in the bottomless basin between the bars. But I do it anyway. I must. Perhaps this is the essence of what the mystics call faith. No guarantees, no net, no insurance. But we do it anyway because hanging on to that old bar is no longer an option. And so, for what seems to be an eternity, but actually lasts a microsecond, I soar across the dark void called the past is over, the future is not here yet. It's called a transition. I have come to believe that this is the only place that real change occurs. I have noticed that in our culture, this transition zone is looked upon as a no thing, a no place between places. Sure, the old trapeze bar was real. And as for the new one coming toward me, I hope that's real too. But the void in between, that's just a scary, confusing, disoriented nowhere that must be gotten through as fast and as unconsciously as possible. What a shame. I have a sneaking suspicion that the transition zone is the only real thing, and the bars are illusions we dream up not to notice the void. Yes, with all the fear that can accompany transitions, they are still the most vibrant, growth filled, passionate moments of our lives. And so, transformation of fear may have nothing to do with making fear go away, but rather with giving ourselves permission to hang out in the transition zone between the trapeze bars, allowing ourselves to dwell in the only place where change really happens. It can be terrifying. It can also be enlightening. Hurtling through the void, we may just learn to fly. We cannot discover new oceans unless we have the courage to lose sight of the shore. So this rocked my world, people. And I'm telling you, I told you I got this 3 years ago, and I printed it out. I kept it in my by my bed, and I read it each night before I went to sleep. And today, Kenan and I want to share with you our experiences in our lives where we've been in the void and what that was like for us, the spectrum of feelings we experienced and our personal growth. And of course, our stories are in hindsight. So we're connecting the dots. So it may seem like everything just flowed and it was easy, but trust us, it wasn't. We had to take massive action, pivot when things changed in an instant, and leap in and lean in and leap in and adapt. And so I really want to highlight the challenges as we talk about our experiences and how we overcame them. And we want to show that taking risks and reaching for the next thing is part of our evolution and growth. That is part of the human experience. And we've both evolved. And I would say we're different people after taking these risks that we're gonna share with you guys. So yeah, Kenna, do you want to add
Steph,
anything?
I'd first like to say thank you for sharing the flying trapeze with us. You had not read that to me yet, and I would love a copy. So
Absolutely.
photocopy that and throw it in the mail to me because it was amazing. I want to put that by my bed as well. But I think one thing I would love to say is that I want the audience to really think right now about a time when you've experienced a life transition. So, when have you reached for the next trapeze and gotten out of your comfort zone? So, thinking about a time where you may have quit a job or changed careers or moved to a new place, and use that as evidence that you've taken risks, you've evolved and changed. And I really think asking yourself this important question of like, asking, what do you do to tell yourself about taking risks?
I think that's a great question. What do you tell yourself about taking risks? What does the word risk mean to you? And really putting yourself in that situation of noticing when you've taken risks and what transition means to you, and um, when you're reaching for that trapeze bar. I want to highlight right now before Kenan and I talk about our stories is that you're in a state of taking action even when you're in that void, right? You're not just sitting back waiting for life to happen, right? You're embracing it. You're not looking for perfection because perfection doesn't exist. and and the bar you reach for might not be what you thought it was going to be or you wanted it to be. And but the awareness is you've taken that risk, right? And you always have a choice to reach for another trapeze bar. And I think that's really key is that when you're in that void, that's when you open up to the new possibilities and the change and awareness. So, Ken, I think this is a good segue for you to tell your story about your transition when you left Costa Rica.
Yeah, well, the transition really began with the move to Costa Rica, but the second phase was we were into the second year of our contract, and we had just decided to sign on for a third year, and we were in that next exploration phase of like, what's next? Do we move back to Portland? Or my husband really wanted to stay international. And I knew that I didn't want to be back in Portland, but I also knew I wanted to come back to Oregon. I wanted to be closer to you guys, Steph, our family and friends. I also wanted to put down roots for our boys. And I didn't want to just stay on the international train, which so many teachers do. They kind of, get hooked on teaching abroad. And I was kind of like, all right, I loved this experience. It was awesome, but I want to be back in the States. So I proposed the option of moving to Bend, and my husband jumped at the idea. And I really felt like the seed was planted then. And that summer before our last year in Costa Rica, we came out to Bend. Uh, we went all, did a bunch of outdoor activities, met with a realtor, just really got to explore all that Bend had to offer. And we were all sold. We loved it. But with that said, it was that next piece was, okay, we've decided we want to move here, but now we have to get jobs. We need to find a house. there were so many unknowns, and it was really daunting because we're doing it all from Costa Rica. It wasn't just, oh, hop on a plane whenever you want and go look at a house or, make these life altering decisions on a whim, so to speak, right? So luckily I was coming back to Portland in February, and I know you'll never forget how we hopped in the car and we were driving over to Bend, and we were here for 24 hours. And there was a house that I was coming to look at that we'd seen online. But on the drive over, I had this epiphany that I should probably call the elementary school where we would be slated to go if we did buy that house. And the principal agreed to give me a tour that afternoon. And you'll never forget. Pardon?
As a parent,
As a
right?
parent, exactly. And Steph, you'll never forget when I came back to the car and I was telling you and mom, because mom came on the trip, of course, with us. And I just had fallen in love with the school and I wanted our son to go there so badly. And I even remember talking to my husband later that afternoon and saying, we need to put an offer in on this house. I want our son to go here. And I wanted a job there too. I said, this is my dream school to work in. And so fast forward, it was a bit of a whirlwind, and there was uncertainty because we.
But you bought the house. Remember, on the car ride home, you talked to the realtor, and the realtor's like, here's the number, and you're like, okay, that was their counter offer, and you're like, you called your husband in Costa Rica. He hadn't even seen the house, only through FaceTime or whatever, and you're like, we're doing it, pulling the trigger on a huge financial investment, right?
Right. Which thankfully we did, because if anyone knows the Bend real estate now, we would not be able to get in. It is skyrocketed in price because everyone wants to move here. So thank goodness this was 3 years ago now that we were in this position. So, but yes, and then Steph, you'll of course, then we had to get jobs. So here we are. We've bought a house, but that was one thing that was important to us, was for schools to also know that we were really moving here and invested in Bend, and not just, oh, we want to move to Bend, which is what a lot of people say is, oh yeah, I'm going to move to Bend and I want to move to Bend. But it's also a big, not only a financial deal to get to move into a new place, but also it's a small town. So
Yeah.
there's not a lot of industry. So
Yeah.
unless your partner, if you're moving with someone else, has a job also lined up. Anywho, so
Well, I want to interject one more thing, Kenan. The job market for teachers during that time was insane. I remember the principal saying, mark on your application that you've bought a house, that you are in, because there are hundreds or thousands of applicants for only a handful of positions. So it was like, every teacher wanted to move to Bend for the lifestyle.
right, yeah, Steph, that's so true. And it was really, and that was, so then we also had to fly out to Bend for the job fair, because I thought we'll just apply online and get some Skype interviews, whatever. But it was really important that we were there face to face for these, like, I kid you not, 7-minute interviews. It was like speed dating, but it was so important that we were there and people saw us, and we were just handing out resumes to everyone. And thank goodness the universe provided. I'd like to say that we were in that mind frame of just what will be, but I would be lying if I didn't feel an attachment, right? To be my authentic self, I definitely wanted this to happen. And we were putting everything in that we could, all of our effort. But we did get offered jobs, which was we were so grateful for. And so we, you know, decided that this was meant to be, based on the stars aligning and both of us getting jobs. And I did end up getting a job at the elementary school, our local elementary school that I toured. So that was like huge. And but again, it wasn't without stress or fear. Even I'll never forget, it was spring break and Dave was having to fax over all the loan documents, and we were in this small town in Nicaragua and they barely had internet, and he was racing around town because everything had to be turned in a certain time period. Anyway, but I really felt like we trusted and really what it it worked out.
Well, and what's so awesome about that too, Kenan, is because I was there with you during this real time, right? So as I said earlier, as we connect the dots, it's like, you know, everything worked out, I mean, amazingly, but you were going through like, oh gosh, now we have to fly back for this job fair. That wasn't expected. And you're just like, okay, well, I have to trust that this is what we're gonna do. And the stress of the house. I mean, I think our audience can relate to that too. Whenever you've done something that's like a big change and transition, you're like, okay, well, are we going to get the loan? Are we going to, are all these moving parts going to come together? And, and it's when you're sitting in that space and maybe, you're feeling uncomfortable, but you're allowing that. You're really allowing it to be what it is and not pushing it away saying, I've just got to pretend everything's positive and happy. No, you've got to be with those feelings. And I think, Kenan, when I hear you sharing this journey, what I hear is that you were also listening to your intuition, and that you had evidence that things were happening and it kept you moving forward. So like when you put that job offer and accepted the house, and it was like, okay, that's like one positive, right? So, and then that kept, like, the momentum kept growing, right? So it was like you were so grateful for that, and then so you had to then embrace like the uncertainty. Okay, well, and you also, like, I love this word because you embraced it with wonder, right? Like, I wonder what will happen next. And instead of saying to yourself, I have to have this job first before I can buy this house because that will make us, then I'll be happy. Is that you had to let go and just see what happened. And yeah, I
Some people
marvel at
may have
that.
called us crazy, Steph, because not many people take a plunge to buy a house before they have jobs.
Yeah,
But we had to say to ourselves, something will work out.
something will work out. And so, kind of, what would you say was the greatest, like, growth that you experienced during that transitional time?
That's a great question. Steph, I'd have to say, I think it would be, when we take risks, we look at the process as a growth, and I'm less held captive to expectations of what the outcome should be, right? And I put that in quotes because it's really what what should happen instead of what is happening.
Hmm.
And this has been liberating for me because when we took that risk of moving to Bend, I so often wanted to look through the crystal ball and have a guarantee that this was the right move. Will my kids be happy? Will they like their schools? Will this be good on our marriage? Will we really like this house and neighborhood? Will we like our neighbors? And and I really believe that that's how life works. So we had to sit in uncertainty. We were making a huge, not only a financial decision to buy a house, as you mentioned, of course, like in that place where we didn't even have jobs yet. But when you experience doubt and fear while also feeling adventurous and excited, I was able to embrace the change. And while that took time, and absolutely it took effort, but it also was just being in the awareness of what is.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So
But
I,
but Steph, can I actually thank you for saying how much you loved what I said? But no, I wanted to say that I really would love for you to touch upon. Obviously you've done something similar when you moved to Hawaii. So let's tell us more about that move and what it was like for you.
well, this is it's kind of funny, kind of, because um, you know me. I take quite a few. I have taken quite a few risks in my life. I don't know if I'd say I like taking risks, but I have taken quite a few risks in my life. Um, but I wouldn't actually call myself a great decision maker sometimes in my, at certain points in my life. And this just popped in my head. Like, remember when I would go, like, buy a pair of jeans or something, and I'd have to FaceTime you and be like, what do you think of these jeans? And because I couldn't decide what to get. So I think it's a little like, I see both sides of the spectrum of myself. Like, I can make huge life decisions and, like, dive in and plunge. and then like something silly like buying a pair of jeans. So anyway, that's just an aside. But so our Hawaii experience, Jim and I were planning this vacation uh, 2 winters ago. So it was the winter of 2020, and Jim said, "Let's go to Hawaii," and I was like, "Great, let's go to Hawaii." So we booked our trip, and he said, "Can I go visit the telescope for a day?" And I was like, "Absolutely." So he looked online, and there were no tours available. They don't do tours for outside people, so he um, found a job opening instead of a tour. Applies for the job. The job. And so Jim tells me, and I'm like, "Wait, what? You applied for a job?" So I kind of laughed. I laughed at the situation, right? Because I was like, "Oh, well, we're not going to move to Hawaii." And lo and behold, like he talks to a few people over there. They say, oh, they realize he's for real, um, and then they ask us to come out for an interview, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm sure I'll go to Hawaii for a boondoggle interview, still thinking this is not even a possibility. And we come out here, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool, um, and so we're in this, you know, but I still am thinking I'm not moving to Hawaii. It wasn't my dream to do that, and I realized actually through this that it was one of Jim's dreams to live in Hawaii, and something he really wanted to do. So that's when we got serious in our conversations, because I realized this was something that was near and dear to his heart. So, and this is where the part of the story comes about, where I want to talk about transition is he was going through all of these interviews, and we had 6 weeks from his last interview um, till we found out that he got the job offer. But so during those 6 weeks was this huge transition period where we were living in this uncertainty of, will he get the job offer, and um, are we going to move? Are we going to leave our Portland? We went through, are we going to leave Portland? And we went through all these scenarios, and we weighed all the options, and we processed, and we hypothesized, and, but he didn't have a job offer. So it wasn't real yet. And, and so I was aware that I had to really be open, like really open in this time, like listening to Jim and listening to myself. And Ken and I remember on New Year's Eve, we were staying at your house in Bend. You were on vacation, and we were watching the New York New Year's Eve and the ball dropping, and they played. You know the song that's sung by the Hawaiian ukulele player? I can't remember his name right now, but it's "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." And they played that song, and I looked at Jim and I said, "This is a sign." And then another time during that trip, we saw a produce van that said Aloha Produce. And I was like, "There's another sign." And so again, we were like the 6 weeks of uncertainty, and I'm like, we don't know if this is even an option for us. Um, and I realized during this time that I wanted this just as much as Jim did. And I was willing to risk leaving my family, my amazing friends, my community, our school, my job. And I had to like really sit with this, like, oh wow, I'm ready to reach for that trapeze bar. If that becomes an option for us, I'm willing to reach for that because I am ready for a change. And I would never have been, I didn't even know I was open to that, which is so funny because if you'd asked me, 6 weeks before, I would have said, no way am I leaving all of this, right? Um, so then, the way that everything else unfolded, Jim got the job offer that end of January, like 2 days before we were going on our vacation there that we had planned prior to him even looking for this job. And everything kind of fell into place. We met these amazing people who um, I randomly asked them, "Do you know of any houses to rent in Hawaii?" And she was like, "Actually, my husband does." And they sent us this listing. We ended up renting this house, and we found this amazing school for our kids, and we got to experience the town, and it just felt right. And while we were there on vacation, Jim signed the employment contract, and then we moved the end of May. So what I've learned from taking this huge leap of moving to Hawaii is that when I take risks, I actually feel two opposite ends of the spectrum. I feel excitement and confidence, and I feel overwhelm and anxiety. And it seems like, how can you have the yin and the yang? But it's simultaneously, and it's a little like odd because I'm trying to kind of grasp that, but I'm realizing that the excitement and the confidence is really what has propelled me to continue to take more risks. Because since we've been here, I've I've grabbed many more trapeze bars, and some of them haven't fit, and I've had to say, you know what, I'm going to pivot and I'm going to reach for another one. Um, but what I realize is that the more I take, the more alive I feel. And when I'm able to see that risks are just part of the human experience. So, like when I say that, they're just part of the human experience. And it's really living life and trusting in the process that it actually makes me want to reach for more bars. I want to experience more. It's a it's not like an addiction to change or new things, but it's a curiosity, it's a wonder. And even if it's scary and challenging at times, because heck yeah, I mean, first to admit, like it's not easy. I like I said earlier, I don't just sit back in my chair and wait for things to happen. Um, but I'm okay with it. I'm okay with the overwhelm and anxiety, and I'm okay with the challenges. And now I've learned to be a person that embraces risk. And I think, I mean, I consider myself like I love my life, and I feel like it's exciting. I run the gamut of emotions, and it's definitely been a wild ride. And that's what my husband and I, we text each other sometimes, Jim and I, and we're saying we're so, we're so happy to be riding this ride with you, riding this wave. Actually he does, and he does little surf emojis.
I love it. I love it. Oh, Steph. So, what would it be like right now if you were to go shop for a pair of jeans? Would you think you'd just be able to grab them and buy them, or would you still need to call me?
I might still have to call you, Kenan.
Yes, I'm always there for you.
Oh, I love you.
I love you too. It's just so fun to be with you here today.
So awesome. And thank you to our audience. And um, as always, please subscribe and turn on your notifications. We release new episodes weekly. You can find Twin Chat with S&K at our YouTube channel, Apple Podcast, and Spotify. You can also find us on Instagram. And so, you know what, this is interesting? My Instagram handle is at rise.life.coach. And I just say it's at Rise Life Coach. I don't know if people can find me, but if you can't, put the periods in there. Rise.life.coach. I might have to change my handle. Oh my gosh. And you could also find us online at riselifecoach.com. So namaste. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. See you next time. Bye.